Zionism is one of the concepts that is overtaking the minds of Judaism. I say it's trying to always transform a Jew, what it means to be a Jew, instead of the religion. The Zionists have deep pockets. They pay for the most expensive public relations groups, PRs. They pay for for instance, in universities, which is something which is you would be able to easily follow. In every university, almost in the United States, or maybe every university, I wouldn't say every, but almost every university, and in around the world, through many years already, the Jewish communities would make a little room or apartment or something that the Jewish people should be able to gather to pray and have kosher. And they gave it a name called Hillel, the organization called Hillel. Hillel was a rabbi at the time of the Talmud, like 2,000 years ago, and it was a person who was supposed to be very known to be very friendly and helpful for people. So they gave the name Hillel to the houses. And it was created solely and purely for Jews to be able to practice their religion, Jewish students, and that they should have a place to eat kosher and all these things. Zionism came like 20, 30 years ago, whatever. And they started taking over these Hillel houses. They infused millions and millions of dollars to build up these houses where they push Zionism. And if somebody, the leaders of these groups, these houses, doesn't push Zionism, then they throw them out. How do they get the power? Simply from money. For instance, in Virginia, just like 2 years ago, there was the president of a Hillel house. They'd have elections for the president, and it was a girl, a lady, and she got a memo from the Israeli consulate that she should be speaking about Zionism. So she was stupid enough to answer them, and she sent them back an email saying that it's not my issue to push Zionism. This is about Judaism. It's a house of Judaism. Immediately, they had the community in Virginia, whatever the powers or whatever, and they got her thrown out. And everybody was upset from the university and everything, University of Virginia, because I believe it's called the University of Virginia. That's the name, but you can check it. It's a story that just happened like 2 years ago. Their power is extremely strong because they have a tremendous amount of money. So they're able to use. They pay for the best PR. Public relations, which PR is a tremendous power issue. But I know, like in other schools, they pay for classes to teach Zionism. They give a lot of money for schools and they teach. It only is effectual in modern schools because now, the more religious, they can't do that. But they have tremendous, many ways of affecting the education. It comes from non-religious Jews who are very well off, and unfortunately they don't understand what it means to use the money for charity, and they think supporting the state of Israel and their cause is supporting God, basically.
What about AIPAC?
AIPAC is the same thing. AIPAC is, again, people think that there's a tremendous amount of Zionists who control the United States, and that's not true. They're just efficient. It's a small amount, and they're efficient. AIPAC is American Israeli Public Alliance Committee. It's a group of people, and I must tell you, I go every year, and my colleagues also, and we demonstrate. AIPAC makes a convention once a year in Washington, in the largest convention hall, and almost every single politician, Democrat, Republican, president, majority leader, minority, everybody comes and bows down to, gives respect to the AIPAC, and what their power is, that what they do is they concentrate their power. So in other words, if they'll pay first of all for politicians to go to Israel, free trips, and what they'll do is they'll support a politician, a nobody, who's against an incumbent, a distinguished politician, but if this person is very supportive of Israel, they'll infuse money into that person's campaign at a tremendous amount. And if somebody dares to show sympathy for the Palestinian cause, which happened, there's a congressman called Paul Finley wrote a book about this. Maybe you've heard of that? And he was an incumbent. I think he was a 5-term congressman. he let himself speak openly that, for pro-Palestinian or sympathetic to Palestine, and they decided that was it. So they took a nobody who ran against him, basically, and they just pushed his campaign. And he won against this incumbent of 5 terms simply because he supported. Now what happens is, that's not such a big thing, it's only one congressman. But everybody takes an example from that. All the other congressmen says, listen, what am I, nuts? And they may also convince themselves that they mean well, they're doing well, because they say we won't accomplish good things. So this subject we won't touch, that's all. This subject we'll let lie. And the same thing with education, when it comes to Jewish, this is, mind you, the non-Jewish, but the Jewish people, the intimidation of the Jewish communities is tenfold more than that, because if anybody wants to speak up against Zionism or educate against Zionism, which we do in our communities, they'll harass them. They'll, as I say, the leading rabbis were murdered by them. I mentioned this Rabbi Blau. The first martyr, maybe famous martyr, was somebody called Dr. Dahan in 1924. He was a diplomat from Denmark, and he wanted to become a religious Jew. He thought to become a religious, become a Zionist. In 1924, at the beginning of Zionist waves into Palestine, he went to Palestine, and the king of Denmark even escorted him out because he was a brilliant, he was a poet. There's even a monument for him in Denmark. He was a very famous person, Dr. Dahan. He was brilliant. He was a diplomat in many languages, and he decided to become a religious Jew. He went to Palestine. He joined the Zionists, but then he was a serious person. So he went over to he saw that the chief rabbi of Palestine and the religious community were anti-Zionist. He couldn't figure it out. But he was a real serious person. He meant really, to serve God when he decided to become a Zionist. That's why he went to Palestine. He met with this chief rabbi. His name was Rabbi Sonnenfeld. The end of the story was he became the representative of the Orthodox community, anti-Zionist, because he really meant Judaism. And he said to the Jewish community, look, your voice is not heard outside, nobody knows about this, and I'm going to represent you in the world. And the first thing was he arranged the meeting with the king of Transjordan. Let me have his name. It was King Abdullah, I think it was, of Transjordan, the great-great-grandfather of today's, let me just see, of today's King of Jordan, whatever it was. He had this meeting. Here it is. This 1924 King Hussein of the Hejaz was the ancestor of the King Abdullah of Jordan, and Dr. Dahan arranged this meeting with him, and Rabbi Sonnenfeld gave a letter of loyalty with the Jewish community. Now the Zionists were very threatened by this movement. So, then Dr. Dahan, this fellow, said, I'm going to go to Great Britain to Parliament, and I'm going to present the view of the Jewish community. 2 days before he left, they assassinated him. They warned him they're going to assassinate the Haganah. And so that was in 1924, this was. And this was the first famous martyr, not an Arab, but a Jew. And since then, this is an ongoing sad history that they've murdered Jews who oppose them. And so Jews hear this, and I was threatened with my life. Many of our people were hit, we were beaten, but thank God, not seriously, but our colleagues in Palestine are brutally beaten. Rabbi Cohen, who was here, he has bulletproof windows. In Manchester, they shot bullets in his house. They slashed his tires constantly. They beat him. You have no idea. And the issue is that what they do, they don't have to do it to everybody. They do it to Rabbi Cohen, and other Jews see it, and they decide, you know what? I'm anti-Zionist, but I'm not going to speak up because I have a wife and kids. Before a demonstration, they could call us and say, I know where your children are. I know what school they're in. And so we get threatened and so forth. But God help, we continue. But in Palestine, they get brutally beaten. So this isn't what they do. Why the religious communities are intimidated. And so they're very efficient. What they do is they single out individuals, they did to Deir Yassin when they went. They went and they massacred a community, Deir Yassin and another, and then the other Arab communities panicked. So then the Zionists said they ran away. They left us their houses. They didn't run away, because of the ruling. They ran away because they were afraid they were going to be murdered, right? So Rabbi Cohen has. The police, many times they put, England is very famous for having cameras all around. They have cameras around this house, and yet they never caught one person yet. This is years and years. They never caught one person yet. A question was asked of the chief rabbi of Palestine, who I mentioned moved to the United States. Somebody said to him, how do you expect, you're a minority, is this majority of people, how do you expect to accomplish anything? So he said, I'm the majority. He said, why? He said, because we have God with us. We hope that the world will eventually, they'll comprehend that they're supporting something that is what the world would call inhumane. We say it's against God, that's something that is a flawed, selfish political movement that is not as portrayed, some pioneering movement does, to protect the Jewish people and so forth. It's not what it's all about, because Jews were living with Muslims for hundreds of years, and it's not necessary to have. And the whole concept of the state is a guilt ride that the world had in a manner because they were silent, many of them, by the Second World War, and then they felt responsible. So the Zionists used, which they do use, the Holocaust, and they used this guilt feeling in the world that we for 5 years when Jews were being slaughtered, but they should really have the state. They should have a piece of land for themselves and let them have it. So the Zionists use that very much so. It's their best business deal. That they're using the issue of the Holocaust. They have Yad Vashem and all these remembrances of the Holocaust in order to further their issues. We don't, that's repugnant by us, because the Holocaust, the Jews, not only were they murdered, but now they're being, like metaphorically speaking, dug up to rebel against God. The ones that were murdered and suffered so much, and now they're being used again to rebel against God, to perpetrate a crime, taking away the land from the Palestinians. So it's really unfortunate. As far as we are concerned, we went through Hitler, Crusades, Spanish Inquisition, all these many things. And our tradition, our approach has always been, which was taught us, and this is the only way we know, is that we pray, that we're told to pray to God and, repent, that God should, that we believe, because everything is as a result of, God is perfect and totally compassionate, and if a tsunami comes, an earthquake comes, it's because there's a reason behind it, or a car accident, or whatever. So we believe that you have to be introspective, just like Jonah, came as the king of Nineveh, the city of Nineveh. It wasn't a Jewish city, and the king, and he said, I'm a messenger from God, and the king told the people that they have to repent. We believe that that's the way, but everything that happens is from God. We have to repent and pray to God. At the same time, we are told, so for instance, if there's a king, a leader, puts a decree against Jews, the methodology that we are taught and that we practice for all the years is three things. We have to, it's called for prayer and and trying to placate our enemy. In other words, even a true enemy, if we that we would try to placate them and approach them, and that they should. And the third way is to run away. That is the Jewish. Yes, that's in the Torah. It says Jacob prepared his house when Esau, his brother, wanted to murder him. He prepared. It says with these three things, and it's taught us that this is the way we should do it in generations. It says by Jacob in Vayishlach in the Bereshis Genesis. It says that when Esau wanted to kill his brother, it says that Jacob. It's Vayishlach Yaakov. It's the verse. It says Vayishlach Yaakov Matanos Esav Ochav. He sent presents and to his brother Esau. He gathered Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. He sent. It says Malachim, angels. And the rabbi said whether he sent angels, real angels, or messengers, and he sent them. And it says a whole chapter of what he sent to his brother Esau, who wanted to murder him. And the rabbis, all of them, throughout the generations, said, and our ways are not, when it's something which is handed down like from Moses, that we don't. It's not interpretations that we pick and choose. We make. It's what's given to us. That this is the approach. That this is the like metaphor or the example that God is teaching us from exile. That how we do approach others. That is our sole teaching in the concept of how we approach others. Again, there is a concept of somebody tries to murder you, you're allowed to save yourself. If somebody, there's a verse in the Torah, it says, if somebody breaks through a window, then your life is at danger, you're allowed to murder him. If you feel he's going to, he can maybe murder you. So there's, the approach that you have to save your life. Defense. But to create, like their concept, would they expand it to create a country, that's what the Zionists want to use that concept. That is misconstruing the Torah. That's not true, because defense is talking when somebody's going to break into my house, but not that I want to create a state which is expressly forbidden according to the Torah. In other words, I'm saying this, and many of the rabbis bemoan the fact that by Hitler, the Jews did not do enough to approach Hitler and try to placate him. Why didn't they do it? Because the Zionists, mind you, led by Stephen Wise in the United States, a Reform rabbi. My name is Wise, isn't that Wise? Whatever, it's no difference. But there's plenty of Wises who are Zionists, don't think. But anyway, this guy Wise, he was very famous. He was in Manhattan, and he was a big leader of Zionism. And he declared a boycott against Hitler. And Hitler said, replied to this boycott, I take up the challenge of the Jews. And they say not only there was witnesses that he threw himself on the carpet and bit the carpet, and he said, I'm going to, take revenge with the Jews because of this boycott. So, and the rabbis, on the contrary, they thwarted the approach. They were thwarted with their efforts, and they marched on. They wanted to do many different things to religious Jews, and they weren't able to accomplish what they wanted to.
There are people who know Israel is not right, is not righteous.
Right.
The Zionists are not righteous. What should they do?
We always say that you go to a doctor and he sees, and you say, I've had something's bothering me, and he gives you aspirin or something, or he gives you cortisone because you have a lot of pain, and he doesn't diagnose the problem. That it could be, God forbid, life-threatening, and he may put a Band-Aid on a hemorrhaging wound. You'll stop. You walk out of the office, everything's fine, but that's really not solution. No solution whatsoever. You must diagnose the problem. So the first thing that we say is like Rabbi Beck keeps on saying, we are giving you we're diagnosing what the problem is. The problem is Zionism. We believe that the world it would be very possible if there would be enough of documentaries showing the history of Jews in Egypt and Tunisia and Morocco and all these lands, and saying to the world, look what this is, that this is not a religious conflict. Zionism is purely a evil movement and putting pressure, just like South Africa was stopped. South Africa was successfully recognized in the United Nations, and all the other countries did business with them. They were, a respected, dignified country. Nobody put sanctions on them. Everybody did business with them. And what stopped it? The grassroots eventually made their politicians uncomfortable, and it was stopped. Not because America or other countries, the leaders, stopped it. It was the grassroots. So we hope. We're not prophets, mind you. We can just say, we're required to tell the world that it is wrong. Zionism does not represent Judaism. It's a wrong, evil movement. We want the world to understand that Zionism is is totally corrupt in its ideology and forbidden according to the Torah, and that they don't represent Judaism. They have no legitimacy according to the Torah. Now, taking it from there, I can humbly, say the approaches that we feel could be done. That if the world would be properly educated, if there would be enough pressure put on the leadership that they should help dismantle this state. And you may look at it like impossible, but I don't think it's such a wild idea, because anybody who follows what is happening sees that the concept of the state of Israel is totally flawed. Why? Because in 30 years from now, the majority will be Arabs, statistically. or something like that. And they're going to pledge allegiance to the Jewish state. It totally doesn't make sense. Or that it's called the Jewish state when you have the majority, Muslims. Is the whole concept of keeping a country that it has to be a Jewish state amongst Arab and Muslim people who don't want this, and telling the people who live there, the refugees from Jerusalem, that they can't go back. It's all ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. It has to implode. And there's no reason for its necessity for its existence. Because, like we said, if the Jews and Muslims were able to live together, and you would approach the Palestinian leadership, and you'll ask them, is it acceptable to live with Jews? They say yes. So we profusely apologize for what you've been wronged. We recognize you've been wrong. We want to transform this. The United Nations will help transform this into, let's say, an international country, and we're going to pay you back restitution for all the damages done. And it will cease to exist under the name of Jewish state. And it will cost. And now there's certain Jews who feel danger because they'll feel the Arabs are going to kill them. So we're going to have them move to Canada. Whoever feels unsafe, they'll move, and we'll help them settle themselves. It costs $50 billion. How much do they give the Israelis for protection to build these walls and the latest military technology every single year? So just look at it, and why can't that be done? Why can't this become a real democratic state? Think about it. And 35 years ago, when you mentioned the concept of two-state solution, you were considered, a terrorist, basically, right? If you remember, that was a fact. And all of a sudden, two-state, that became the beautiful solution. And most people who deal with it say that it's not a solution. Because I've met many Arabs and Muslims from I went to Calgary. I met an old Arab. He says, a rich man, beautiful houses, and his children came. I spoke in the University of Calgary, and they brought me to their house there. And he says, you see this? He says, I have all this. It means nothing to me. I want my house in Jerusalem. We point our fingers at the Zionists. We say, you are the root cause of the bloodshed. Your hands are covered in blood of both the Jews, both the Palestinian people, that don't think you're a solution and don't think you're from God. You are the ones who have brought the Palestinian claim is the right. We're not getting into which leadership, what their approach is, but the root issue is that Zionism is the cause of everything, and it should be removed. That is, they want to gain legitimacy by the world, and we're telling the world it is not legitimate. They're building it, claiming that the Torah sponsors it, that the Torah allows it. In the UN, it's the weirdest thing. We go every year to the UN. We're invited to go as an NGO, and there's one day that they speak for Palestine. And we go there, and every year they have, many countries get up and they speak, that it's not right, and the Palestinian right should have the right to this. Mostly they follow the track of two states lately, that's their way. But invariably, the Zionists will, when they have a rebuttal or whatever they'll claim, they'll always mention, although the United Nations is about democracy and not about that religion dictates I can take the land from you, but they'll mention that the land is ours because God gave it to us. We were there thousands of years ago. Even though you won't say that the Indians were in the United States hundreds of years ago, and you won't say that I can take your land away because my great 1,000 years ago was in your home, I can therefore take your home. Nobody would speak like that. Yet the Zionists invariably speak about the right because it was godly given to us, even though it doesn't make sense in the UN. It doesn't belong there, right? So they're always using. So our job is that we get up there and we constantly speak that they're falsifying. These are con artists. It's false what they're saying. They have no legitimacy according to the Torah. And we say, take it from there, that we hope that the world will eventually, change attitudes, and stop in its tracks what they're doing. I always wondered, there's a wealth of money in the Arab countries. And I've been giving speeches on this issue so many years. The fact of the matter is, in Western civilization, Zionism carried the microphone. there was always the picture of the Arab and the Muslim as the villain. Nobody infused money into the American media to talk about the homes that they provided for Jewish people. Nobody spoke about the good life that the Jewish communities, pictures of Jewish communities. Nobody spoke about, in that vein, that the Muslim community is accepting of others and so forth, and that pictures of what Zionism is doing. You don't, absolutely nothing. So if you will tell me it's because there was no openings to do that, that is not true. We have every year, and I have it out. You can look on our site. We have every year. We put in the New York Times the day of the week, one of the day when Israelis make the big parade on Fifth Avenue for Independence Day. We put in a big article in the New York Times refuting Zionism and speaking about what how bad it is and so forth. And many years ago, 40 years ago, I remember when we started doing this. They didn't want to put it in, and we had to fight them. We fought them till they finally, and then they cut. Supposedly, words fell out from the article. We went through, I can't tell you what, to get these things put in. We made demonstrations in the streets that the police didn't allow us to make demonstrations. We fought it with civil rights and so forth. For money, you can buy advertisements. You can mail advertisements if if you're having problems with newspapers. There's so many ways to approach the American public, and they're never approached. They were never approached. Maybe today it will be different. Well, it's changing maybe because of the internet, But it was nobody really approached to change the mind of the layman in the street. The ones who can eventually, put pressure. You have the 99, right? Because people are poor. Everybody, the movement, and people are they don't have money. So they decide they're going to go out and demonstrate and, do their thing against politicians. And they're there. Why? Because it affected them. The concept, Israel has a free ride. Israel had a free ride, and they're fed up. They said that the 99% is saying we're not going to accept it anymore. They're trying. How much they'll accomplish, I don't know. But whatever it is, they just said to the politicians, enough is enough. But when it came to Israel, everybody supported it, more or less. And even today, many of the people, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, still have this misconstrued view, of what Palestine was. It was a land without a people, for a people without a land. All these pictures of what Muslim communities, like I say, who would have believed that Jewish communities thrived and flourished as extremely religious communities in the Muslim lands? Nobody knows all of this. And ironic, because where did Hitler come from? He didn't come from Muslim lands. It was in the Christian society. Where was all these pogroms, pogroms and blood libels that they said Jews drink Christian blood. We're not allowed to touch blood. After we slaughter an animal, we have to salt it, and the whole system take out every drop of blood. We're not allowed to drink blood. But these blood libels and all these other things in Christian society. Yet the Christians claim it's the Muslims are our greatest enemy. So I'm saying there is no education whatsoever. The education comes purely from the Zionist communities. So obviously, you say it's a dream to close down the state of Israel. Because why should anybody think differently? But if there would be an education, it is so flawed. I was in Durban, South Africa, when they had the conference against racism, right? And so there was a very distinguished reporter, and I spent time with him because it was like 2 weeks this whole problem. He said, Israel boycotted America, walked out. They walked out. And he said to me, you know why they're walking out? Because they can't debate the subject of Israel. Why? Because is it a Jewish state or is it a democratic state? How are you going to debate it? If they're going to claim it's a democratic state, so how can you differentiate between Palestinians and so forth? So in other words, it can't be both a Jewish state and a democratic state. I'm saying it is so flawed, the state of Israel, in its whole concept in every part of it, and the world should be fed up with it and say, they have a solution and bring a solution. Israel lives on the American dollar, right? So if they would enforce a solution, that the settlements, look what they're doing with the settlements and all they're doing, they're doing it and nobody could stop them. So logically, it could be stopped, but there's no force, there's no backing of people. It's not like you say, oh, I'm saying that you should have so many people, and let's change the attitude of people. They should become Democrats instead of Republicans. The whole United States should become Democrats. Or everybody should, like sugar instead of salt. It's flawed. The state of Israel is flawed in its essence. It's flawed in what it did. It stole the land from people. But there's no education. And there's no education because nobody puts in money for education. So think about it. It could be changed. If South Africa could have been changed, why can't Israel be changed?